just wanted to get one last video in before that time.
That felt like it wasn't even real. I mean, it went by so fast.
That's my baby.
On June 2nd of 1985, longtime friends Leonard Lake and Charles Ning were shoplifting by a mall in southern San Francisco. Charles was able to flee the scene before authorities arrived. However, Leonard was stopped right by his car on his way off the property. Here, he was investigated and after finding a .22 revolver with an illegally fitted suppressor, was arrested and sat back while the police searched his vehicle. Further, alarming evidence was found when police noticed multiple bullet holes and bloodstains painted in the back seat. After examining the suspect's ID, they noticed something disturbing. His age was listed as 26 years old. Leonard was 40 at the time, and it was clear that this wasn't his valid ID. In fact, it wasn't his ID at all, but instead one that belonged to a missing man named Robin Stapley. After being arrested and taken back for questioning, Leonard would die from self-induced cyanide. By his body was a note revealing his real name and confessions to over 20 murders. After this, a search was performed on a ranch Leonard owned. Here, police would find dozens of corpses, pounds of bone fragments, an arsenal of weapons, and most notably, a collection of videotapes. These are the Leonard Lake tapes.
Good evening. It's a Sunday in October, 22nd, 23rd, something like that. Very close to my 38th birthday. And I'm starting this tape without script or without any real organization of what I want to say. But I do feel I need to explain. Please cooperate with this. We'll be as nice as we can to you within the limits of keeping you prisoner. If you don't go along with this, we'll probably take you into the bed, tie you down, rape you, shoot you, and bury you.
This is Kathleen Allen, one of Leonard and Charles' victims, appearing in a typical interview-style movie that Leonard would make most of his victims endure. On the surface, this might seem like an ordinary interview. No one is screaming or crying. It doesn't appear as if anyone is there against their will. However, as you listen closer, you begin to piece together how disturbing these tapes get.
While you're here, we'll keep you busy. You'll wash for us, you'll clean for us, cook for us, you'll cook for us. That's your choice in a nutshell. It's not much of a choice, unless you've got death wish.
Leonard very calmly explains how he plans to abuse Kathleen, both physically and sexually. Not for any particular reason, no. Just for his own sick enjoyment. Kathleen found her way here after receiving a phone call that her missing boyfriend was shot. Thinking erratically, she immediately left to visit her boyfriend, thinking the call came from the police. If only she took a few more minutes to question the authenticity of the report, she might have found out that this call came from Leonard himself, and Kathleen's boyfriend was already dead. Tricks like these were typical ways that Leonard abducted victims. The tapes that Leonard made were lengthy, most of which I refuse to watch, and are too disturbing to include in this video. However, one of the most noteworthy interviews included a very unnerving conversation between Leonard and a mother worried about her newborn child.
Will you let us go? Probably not.
Why are you doing this?
Because we hate you.
This is Brenda O'Connor, Leonard's neighbor who was abducted along with her husband and child. This is her tape.
Your baby is going to be taken away. Excuse me.
I'm going to be taken away.
There's a family down in Fresno that doesn't have a baby.
You're not taking my baby.
And the baby's dead, right?
I mean, they got one now. That's my baby.
Although Leonard was now dead, the police continued to search for Charles, until one day, almost a year later, his whereabouts were reported in Canada. He was found shoplifting once again, and Canadian officers were contacted to report the running fugitive. From here, there was a lengthy battle in an attempt to get Charles returned to California to stand trial. This is because Canada didn't believe in the death penalty, and sending Charles back to California would surely be a death sentence. However, in 1991, Charles would be expedited back to California, where he would purposefully delay his trial until 1999. Only then would he finally take the stand and face the consequences of his actions.
We, the jury in the above entitled case, find the defendant, Charles Cheetat Ng, guilty of the murder of Harvey Dubbs, as charged in count 3.
Charles was sentenced to the death penalty, and to this day, remains on death row. On the morning of September 20th, 1988, Mother Patty Dole and her 19-year-old stepdaughter Tara Calico went for a bike ride along a trail in Valencia County, New Mexico. This bike ride was a regular for the two, so it wasn't uncommon for the duo to slightly separate when going different speeds. During this ride, Patty would become a bit cautious when she felt as if someone was watching her on the outskirts of the path. She began to get worried and stopped to wait for her daughter as she was trailing slightly behind. However, as the minutes ticked, the realization of what was happening would become all the more apparent.
Tara is missing.
Her disappearance was reported, however nothing was found until 10 months later, when in July of 1999, a disturbing photo was found at a truck stop.
Tara is missing. Tara is missing. Tara is missing.
This photo, depicting a woman who greatly resembled Tara and an unidentified little boy being bound in the backseat of a truck, reportedly fell out of a car owned by a 30-something-year-old man in Florida. Although it's quite a distance away, the little boy is also believed to be Michael Henley, a 9-year-old boy who went missing in New Mexico as well in 1988. It seemed obvious that these were both the two missing people, however FBI's investigation of the photos returned as inconclusive, as it didn't believe there was enough evidence to be sure that either party in the photo were the individuals that went missing. Tara's mother, however, has no doubts. She notes that a scar on the woman's leg was nearly identical to an injury Tara endured as a child, and the book that was beside the woman is one by V.C. Andrews, Tara's favorite author. Her family was almost certain that this was Tara, however no conclusions were ever made. Over the years, more and more photos would begin to surface of Tara. Some her family believed to actually be her, while others are suspected of being sick jokes. There was also a supposed confession from a dying witness in 2013 that claims her bike was disposed of in a junkyard and her body was thrown in a river. However, even till this day, the location of Tara Calico is still a mystery. David Parker Ray, aka the Toy Box Killer, is one of the most psychologically deranged abusers that are included on this list. David Ray was an American killer, kidnapper, and serial rapist. He and his girlfriend, Cindy Hendy, would kidnap women around the Albuquerque area and bring them to their $100,000 trailer that David coined as his toy box. This trailer was fit with dozens of devices to trap, torture, and abuse the many victims that the two kidnapped. Although only a handful had been identified, journals kept by David suggest that this number can jump into the 60s. Once kidnapped, each woman would wake up and play a tape recorder that David left. This recording is an audio file that's about 17 minutes of pure psychotic disgust. I will only show the segments I can to give you an idea of how disturbing this tape is. However, it should be warned that the full recording dives deep into the very descriptive torture that David led these women to endure. This is merely a short segment of that tape.
Hello there, bitch. Are you comfortable right now? I doubt it. Wrists and ankles chained, gagged, probably blindfolded. You are disoriented and scared too, I would imagine. Perfectly normal under the circumstances. Now, you are obviously here against your will. Totally helpless. Don't know where you're at. Don't know what's going to happen to you. You're very scared or very pissed off. I'm sure that you've already tried to get your wrists and ankles loose. No, you can't. Now you're just waiting to see what's going to happen next. You probably think you're going to be raped, and you're sure right about that. Our primary interest is in what you've got between your legs. You'll be raped thoroughly and repeatedly because, basically, you've been snatched and brought here for us to train and use as a sex slave.
Similar to the Leonard Lake tapes, David found joy in watching these women slowly dive into madness when facing the reality of what their life has now become. He thrived on the dread of vulnerable women and got off on their suffering. This tape wasn't some warning or a guide on how to proceed. This was a tool of evil that David made every victim undoubtedly endure. One day, a victim named Cynthia Vigil will be kidnapped and tortured for several days. On an evening when David was out, Cindy accidentally left the keys to Cynthia's shackles in the toy box. Cynthia quickly unlocked her chains, and as Cindy noticed and jumped to intervene, Cynthia jabbed an ice pick through her neck and escaped her prison. She found safety and quickly alerted the authorities of what was going on in this sick neck of Albuquerque. This report finally led to David's arrest, as well as his accomplices, and many other women came forward claiming to have been kidnapped by David. It's very disturbing once you realize that multiple women alerted the authorities of what happened. However, their stories usually face skepticism and weren't investigated. It makes you wonder if some officers in the Albuquerque area were in on David's plan and capitalized on the opportunity to capture and torture young women. David was sentenced to over 200 years in prison, however died in 2002 from a heart attack. Tory Adamcik and Brian Draper met each other when they were both 16 at Pocatello High School. Brian, spending much of his childhood in Ohio, only moved here as a teenager and would bond with Tory over their love for film, especially the horror cult classic, Scream. This love for horror movies stretched much deeper than an appreciation for film. They were inspired by the Scream franchise. Oddly enough, movies were merely the catalyst for the two to meet. Where they truly bonded was their love of violence and each's equal desire to commit a murder. A murder of somebody in their very own high school.
Hey, look, it's Cassie.
Hey, look, I don't know.
Hello, Cassie. I'm getting you on tape, okay? Say hi, please.
This is Cassie Stoddard, a friend of the twos and their desired victim. She was the first name on a death list that the two created, and they would videotape themselves talking about how they planned to execute the murder.
Tory, September 22nd, 2006. We're skipping our 4th hour. We're writing our plan right now for tonight. It's gonna be cool. Burn. it's supposed to happen tonight. So hopefully nothing will go wrong. Everything will go smoothly. And we can get our first kill done, started, and we can keep going. Yeah, if you're watching this, we're probably deceased. So it's pretty creepy. I just thought of that.
What's more disgusting is this conversation happened in their very own high school. No one could possibly imagine what conversations took place right in front of this camera. Later that day, the two were invited to hang out at Cassie's house with her and her boyfriend. Cassie had the house to herself that day and posed as the perfect opportunity to execute their plan. They all spent some time together. However, before leaving, the two made sure to unlock the basement door to allow a way for themselves to get back in. Later that night, Tory and Brian enthusiastically drove to Cassie's house and began filming once again.
September 22nd, 2006. Unfortunately, we have the grueling task of killing our two friends. And they are right in that house just down the street.
We just talked to them. We were there for an hour. But
We checked out the whole house. We know there's lots of doors. There's lots of places to hide. I unlocked the back doors, so it's all locked. Now we just gotta wait. And, yeah.
After this, the two would enter the house through the basement. They didn't immediately attack, but instead made noise, hoping to scare the two and lure them down. Remember, this murder wasn't about just killing any specific individual, but instead scaring them before they do so, similar to how the killer did in Scream. Instead of investigating, however, it was noted that the noise was heard and Cassie felt terrified. Her boyfriend wanted to stay the night, but after his mother declined the request, offered the option of Cassie returning to his home. Although she was scared, Cassie felt a duty to her parents to watch over the house and her pets, and simply excused the noise as just something falling in the basement. Cassie's boyfriend luckily escaped the scene, and after this, the two crept upstairs and together stabbed Cassie a total of 30 times. The camera was once again recording as they left the scene.
Just killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a f***ing joke.
I'm shaking.
I stabbed her in the throat and I saw her lifeless body just disappear. Dude, I just killed Cassie. Oh, that felt like it wasn't real. I mean, it went by so fast.
Shut the f*** up. We gotta get our act straight.
It's okay. Okay, let's buy movie tickets now.
Okay.
Come on.
No.
Goodbye.
They say that you can't make great buildings from bad foundations. As it turns out, the two seemingly perfect friendship would crumble once they were caught by the authorities. Both would immediately blame the other for the murder, and each claimed they had no part in the killings. However, after trial, both teens would be sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. On April 22, 2012, a large boom echoed through the quiet suburbs in North Bend, Washington. Firefighters would arrive as a house explosion engulfed a home in flames. Rescuers desperately put their lives at risk trying to extinguish the fire, only to find a mother and daughter dead at the scene of the tragedy. The twist of it is, it wasn't the fire that took the two, but instead a murder that happened prior. This, in combination with the missing father, led authorities to a conclusion. There was a killer on the loose. Peter Keller was the father in question, murderer of his wife and daughter, currently on the loose somewhere in Washington. This discovery shocked many. Outside of this event, Peter and his family seemed like any other ordinary family. His daughter recently graduated, and everybody seemed relatively happy. Because of this, there was no leads to where Peter could have been. However, relatives and those close to him have noted his interest in building survival bunkers. There was rumor that he had been building one for many years, presumably under the precaution of a doomsday event. However, now it became very clear what the true use of this bunker may have been for. Spotted overhead, 7 weeks later, an underground bunker was discovered in Rattlesnake Ridge. Police quickly navigated to the location, however the sound of upcoming officials quickly alerted Peter. Peter had preparations in the event he was caught, and as police swarmed in, they found a bunker filled with supplies, guns, ammunition, and the dead body of Peter Keller. This bunker was elaborately built. It was designed to provide shelter for a large duration of time, when you take into account the amount of supplies readily available. With this, it was assumed his family's murder was a long-awaited desire. However, the question still remained of why this all happened.
Well, it's about 2 weeks before the end. This is going to be my last video, probably before till after that. That's terrible. Let's try. Well, it's about 2 weeks before I finally drop out of society and start this project. Well, it's about 2 weeks before we finally drop out of society and fully commit to this. This is probably going to be my last video till after that. I just wanted to get one last video in before that time. So far.
As it turns out, a vlog-style video was found in the bunker that gives us some insight as to why Peter executed the murders.
I'm getting to the point where just trying to live and pay bills and live as a civilian and go to work, it just freaks me out. It's actually more comfortable for me to think about living out here, robbing banks, pharmacies, just taking what I want for as long as I can. At least it'll be exciting. It won't be boring. And I don't have to worry about Leonard or Kayleen. And everything will be taken care of. It'll just be me. So.
It seemed as if Peter was just unhappy with his life. He couldn't stand the typical everyday routine and would rather just live in the woods on his own. While this numbing routine of daily life is a common cause for depression, the fact stands that his family didn't need to die. He could have easily just escaped into the woods on his own and left his family behind. This was a murder that was built up through years of self-loathing, inflicted on his innocent family in a manner that can only be classified as pure evil. Starting in 1998, Israel Keyes would begin his notorious crusade as a serial killer. He traveled all throughout the country, murdering many innocent civilians, and doing so in very intricate, thought-out ways. He had a system to select his targets at random, changing his method of murder with each attempt, and would bury makeshift murder kits that he wouldn't touch until years later, leaving no obvious trace of recently bought weapons. Israel was very intelligent, and it allowed him to get away with many crimes. It's suspected that he committed almost a dozen murders in the US alone, with many others taking place in other parts of the world. However, in February of 2012, he would commit his first crime that put him directly in police headlights. In Alaska, at a coffee stand, Israel kidnapped an 18-year-old barista by the name Samantha Koenig. She was threatened and enticed to follow accordingly, as Israel claimed he merely needed money and would only use her for ransom. This would undoubtedly prove true, as only a few weeks later, Israel got in contact with Samantha's parents and instructed them to wire money to Samantha's account. Demanding proof that she was still alive, Israel would send this photo. After this, the money was wired, and the police were able to capture the location of the withdrawals. They found Israel traveling through the southwest of the United States, and upon arrest, found out that Samantha had been dead for weeks. This photo was taken with Samantha's eyes wired open with fishing line to give the impression that she was still alive.